Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a review of Corsair's Nautilus RS 360 ARGB all-in-one cooler. This is a really easy cooler to set up in your build, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about my experiences with it, do some thermal performance testing, the various different setups that I've used, because I've installed it in the Frame 5000D, as you can see here, using it with the standard pre-installed fans, with additional RS 120 and 140 fans, and also put it in side mounted as intake as well. So I'm going to show you how it got on in that setup, and top mounted a little later on with thermal performance testing and noise testing as well. I'll show you what the levels are like for that. But I also want to talk to you about the setup of it, because if you're going to use Corsair's RS fans, which are pretty straightforward in terms of the daisy chainable wiring, then this is a really easy cooler to install in the system and to connect up into that setup. And so the fans that come with it can be wired pretty easily together, connecting the power and RGB connectors from one fan to the next. I'm going to do a separate setup and wiring guide for this all-in-one cooler and show you the exact process. But here I just wanted to give you an overview of it, because essentially you're just connecting these fans up really easily together like this, and then you have an additional couple of extension cables that you can see here that then just plug into the final fan in the chain and then connect up easily to your motherboard. Now the good thing about this is it means that you don't have to use Corsair's controllers like the Commander Core, for example, that came with previous Corsair coolers. This just can be connected directly to your motherboard really easily and wired in. The same for the pump as well, which you can see here, which has its own cables coming out of it. That obviously also has RGB connectors on it and connectors for your powering of it, and it comes with pre-applied thermal paste and is bracketed for Intel as standard, but obviously this will also work with AMD setups too. So you can daisy chain the RGB connector from the pump to the fans, and then just connect the power cable to the AIO pump header on your motherboard. And obviously you can see we've got all the different parts here for using it in Intel or AMD setups, and once you've got it installed, the wiring is really straightforward, because essentially you then only have 3 cables to plug into the motherboard and connect it up, and then it's controlled with your motherboard's BIOS for the fan speed and the pump speed, and your motherboard's RGB software, or the likes of Signal RGB, as I'll show you in a minute, to easily control the RGB lighting across all the fans and the pump. And it's really straightforward to do all this and really hassle-free. Now, in terms of the mounting, the good thing about the daisy chainable cable for the fans is because they can run along the edge, you can basically hide away the majority of the cabling and then run the extension leads to the back, so it ends up being pretty tidy, which is nice. Now, in terms of the mounting of a cooler, that's also straightforward with either AMD or Intel. And as you can see, you can put the tubes on the right-hand side here and even have 4 sticks of RAM in place without any interference there. The top cap with the Corsair logo on it can be popped off, so you can access that, and it can be turned, as you can see in there, if you need to. But also you can pop off the whole thing and replace it with an LCD screen, which is available separately. You can see mounted in the standard setup here with the standard fans throughout, it ends up looking pretty clean and quite tidy, which is nice too. And it does run quietly, as I'll show you later on during testing. And throwing in additional fans is also an option. Now I've top mounted it here as an exhaust radiator, which might be preferable for longevity, but if you want to side mount it instead for intake, which you may well find cools things nicely, you can do that. So you'll see here in testing that it's possible to side mount with the tubes at the bottom, which people tend to prefer thanks to that Gamers Nexus video, and this helps with longevity because it means bubbles get stuck at the top of the radiator instead. But in this build I couldn't do it because of the way it would interfere with the graphics card connecting to the motherboard. The other thing of note is there are enough screws included in the box, however, if you wanted to do push-pull with fans on both sides of the radiator, so that is plausible. However, during this setup, what I wanted to do was to do an intake setup here, so flipping the fans over so they face towards the rear, pulling air through the radiator when side mounted on the case. So the end goal here was to set that up so that we'd have it in this case and this build built into the side, intaking through the rad, helping to cool the coolant down inside. Now, in testing in previous cases, this is shown to be preferable because it does actually help keep the CPU cooler without negatively impacting the GPU temperatures. And I'll show you how we get on with that in a second in the tests that I've done in the build. But you can see it here and what that looks like. Perhaps it doesn't look quite as nice. Depends on your personal preference, but obviously we've got the back of the fans now visible on the front and on the side, which doesn't look quite as clean perhaps. Now, a quick note, I did say Signal RGB, free download. You can get access to this, and then you can use that to control the RGB lighting of the fans and the pump throughout the case. If you're using RS fans, it makes it really easy to use loads of different effects. And that can include immersive effects, which mimic what's on the screen, so you end up with colors on your fans and on your pump similar to what you're seeing in the game, making for a more immersive experience. And this is a pretty simple thing with a free download and nice to use with this cooler. Now on to testing. So I want to show you initially how we've just got the standard fans in the case and a top-mounted exhaust, and did some testing with Cinebench, and with the 9800X3D I got 1165 as my score here, and then the CPU got up to a maximum of 77 degrees C on the cores. Now, with general gaming testing and a variety of games, I found a pretty similar experience in terms of the overall sort of average CPU temperatures. So you'll see those displayed on the top left here. And basically I was looking at somewhere in the 60 to 65 degree region. So it was reasonably cool on this CPU, and found that this led to a good experience across a number of games. And this is without getting too loud as well. So I'll show you a sound test of what that was like in a minute. But it was pretty quiet, surprisingly quiet when delivering this experience. And now, slightly different one, because I wanted to show you with all those extra fans, but also with intake radiator, I got a much higher score on Cinebench. So the score went up significantly to 1270, so get a better score on Cinebench here. The average temperatures of the CPU is also lower, although the maximum was a little bit higher. The average core temperatures are lower, and so it performed better in that setup. The other thing is that there wasn't a negative impact on the GPU temperatures. So I found when testing in a variety of different setups here, the GPU didn't get a lot hotter, and the CPU was similar in terms of the general performance. So there wasn't a massive decrease in the CPU temperatures, but this is obviously going to vary depending on the CPU you're using. If you're using a hotter running CPU like an i9 from Intel, for example, you might find this makes a big difference. But here it kept the CPU temperature down, didn't negatively impact the performance of the GPU, and also while running these games at 4K and pushing it pretty hard with maximum settings, I just found the experience was good and it was nice and smooth. So I would still recommend side mounting your radiator as intake, because it does make a difference, especially to the scores and overall performance of your system, and it can help with temperatures. Although I haven't seen a massive difference here, it does make a difference in my testing in other games. And you can see that it leads to a smooth experience across a number of different things. So all in all, the Nautilus is a great cooler for the money, and if you're using Corsair's RS fans throughout your system anyway, it makes for a sensible choice. It's not as straightforward as Corsair's IQ Link setup, but it's a lot easier than previous Corsair coolers to set up in your case, and you can use it with your motherboard software and with the BIOS really easily, so there's a lot less faffing around. Stick around now to hear a sound test of what it sounds like just when gaming. You'll hear some keyboard noise, but that shows just how quiet the cooler is because it's not overpowering everything else in the room. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for watching. You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos, you might well find them interesting or useful, and most importantly, have a great life.